Fuck it then. Fuck it. Hi. This is the Currency Podcast episode 99. I'm going to be continuing my career in the PGA Tour, but actually, in case you tuned into the most recent episode, I downloaded a different golf game because this one's better and has a better career mode. For so many reasons, ones that I won't even get into, but that you'll just have to take my word for. You're really just gonna have to take my word for it. You're really just gonna have to trust me and trust the sound of my voice. I'm sorry for the amount of days between the last episode and this one. I'm trying to keep it weekly, and so I'll correct for this gap of 9 or 10 days by having another episode in a couple days. But ultimately, probably more so, even more frequently than weekly would be ideal. But so I'm gonna start my career mode on this other golf video game that's better because it lays out the schedule that I'm following down for my career. It lays out my career a lot better, and that alone is worth $60 for me to pay for this game. Is that this one actually gives you a schedule for the events that you're going to play, so you can know if you're going to advance in your career. The other career mode was dog shit, if I do say so myself, about another thing. If I do allow myself to criticize something else to be dog shit. Let me turn up the gain so that you can hear me even more clearly. Great, so I'm 2 minutes in and I've done literally nothing, but okay, so the career mode for this video game, it's a golf game. I'm playing as Barge Mistletoe, and I already made the custom player, but this is my first event on the Korn Ferry Tour, and I'm gonna have to actually win some events on the Korn Ferry Tour during the course of my career. Over these next however many episodes, I'm going to I'll probably be bad in the beginning, and then you can follow my career. Besides that, I'm still making this podcast, and it's a Twitch stream. But you already know that it's at least one of those. So good for me for iterating. That's what I mean. So I'm gonna play my first event. I've basically never played this game before, so I'll probably be bad in the beginning. This, as you can see if you're watching on the video, is the first look that you'll get of Barge Mistletoe. He's wearing, he's wearing a tan jacket. That's one of the only interesting things about him, besides that he has highlighter green facial hair. But all in all, a pretty serious pro. And you wouldn't be able to knock the work that he's put in. Him being who he is, if you're gonna disrespect Barge Mistletoe, you might as well put a stake through the heart of Jack Nicklaus or Gary Player. Because if you're going to talk any shit about a guy that takes golf as seriously as Barge Mistletoe, I would question your motivations, but the entire golfing world would. So the reason I had so many days between this episode and the last one is
beside Rich Beam. And Rich, this next golfer is about to take part in their very first Korn Ferry Tour event. What are they up against? What can they expect for the season ahead?
Luke, it's all been fun and games up until now. Now, this is where reality hits.
Even though I'm talking into it, where it doesn't register any of the words that I'm saying for some reason, even though the volume on my mic is up. That just puts a smile on my face and brings a natural glow to my skin. As you can see, Barge Mistletoe is he's a pretty cool guy, or something like that. We'll see how he'll change in appearance over time.
That's the way that you get from the Corn Ferry Tour.
Let's see here. It's like their broadcasters are talking. I can't really hear them in my headset, but I turned the volume down on the Twitch stream so that they should be more silent than they were in the last one. Either way, I can't hear them, so I'll just be ignoring them and talking over them. Yeah, so I'm just going to hit some balls out here in the driving range, try to do my best. This is my first event on the Corn Ferry Tour, and I think it's just going to count my points up over time or whatever. Not that that matters a lot. Okay, 131 yards.
They are into some deep rough here, fellas.
But, so I was in Houston, and, oh, that was a good shot. It was a decent shot. And then I went to Austin, just to check out those cities in case I wanted to move there. And so that's what I did in my life. I did some open mics down there. I saw Joe Rogan at a show. That was, I guess you would say that that was a surprise. I mean, it was a surprise. Because he was a surprise guest at the place I was. I was at Kill Tony on a couple days ago. I bought a ticket to watch Kill Tony. And Kill Tony is like an open mic. You can stand up. You can sign up to do stand up at it. I didn't sign up because I didn't plan to. Like I was not going to because I don't want to yet. I just wanted to. The first time I went to Kill Tony, I wanted to buy a ticket and watch it. But then Joe Rogan ended up being a surprise guest host, but everybody who is a guest host on Kill Tony is a surprise. But the people that were there, or the guests, were Mark Normand, Ari Shaffir, Shane Gillis, and Joe Rogan on Kill Tony with Tony Hinchcliffe and Brian Redband, in case you know anything about that. But Tony Hinchcliffe and Brian Redband are the people that are always on it. And so it was just like a power-packed lineup of guest hosts. And, I mean, I guess I could have ended up doing stand-up in front of them. But you need your name pulled out of a bucket, and that's unlikely. And I wanted to see the show. So I didn't... I mean, besides that, I didn't feel like getting roasted in front of Joe Rogan and Shane Gillis and Mark Normand either. I'm not ready. I just feel like too shitty of a comedian that I'm actually going to chance that. But I'm not going to go into it any further because probably a number of you don't know anything about Kill Tony. But the episode that I was at, it'll air on YouTube, I guess like in a week or something. But that was pretty cool. And I would say that Austin is like the oh, this is a chip in for birdie. I'm not really paying much attention, so I'm probably playing badly. Oops. That was a bad one. This is really going to set me back on the Corn Ferry Tour if I turn in a shitty round here. And the previous game, it didn't let you play a full round in the competitive competition it set up for you for your career mode. It just chose what holes you played as if they're like making the decision for you, like, oh, you wouldn't want to play a whole round. But of course I want to play a whole round. Like, you would want it to be as real as possible, not play 4 holes in a round. It's ridiculous. The other game made all these assumptions about you as a player. But I would say that Houston is like the white... I mean, Houston is the black Austin. Austin is the white Houston. Austin is pretty white, overly represented, with lots of white people. That's what you get when you let your heart win. If you're a white person, you go to Austin. So, like, I went on the trip. When I was in Houston, I just stayed downtown and took their trains everywhere. I didn't have a rental car. I just took their public transportation, and it actually worked out. How about that? Their public transportation worked out. I feel bad about getting behind on my podcast. It makes me feel bad, but
With the hybrid. Hoping for a bounce here, preferably to the left.
when I flew out of Columbus, I was just thinking about Ohio State football for some reason. Like maybe I needed to fly out of Columbus
And this putt is
to be able to think clearly, like clear my head, because of the fog that hovers over this city that's induced by the Ohio State University. They provide a suffocating fog with their influence. The Ohio State University probably influences the whole city. You know how they get. Or you probably don't if you're not from here. If you're not from Columbus. I was just thinking about like Brutus the Buckeye and how he's different from Bucky the Badger, but like, and then I got to see Nebraska lose to Northwestern.
off the blade.
And let me give you some sports takes here
Well done.
in this interim episodes of sorts. I mean 99. The next one will be number 100. In case you're able to count. In case you're have a normally functioning brain.
And on this par 4 hole.
In case you have that, or in case you don't.
Great drive. Right up in the canopy of the trees.
I don't know, for some reason I feel like a wallflower today. Today I'm going into wallflower mode. Where I feel like
No foul there with that shot.
the nation, or whoever is listening, needed me to be
Right to left here.
more boring or something. I was thinking about Brutus the Buckeye, and it's kind of like Bucky the Badger, in case you've seen him.
Really a comfortable shot.
He's a Badger. He's Wisconsin's mascot, and Bucky,
Be a great up and down. Go ahead and
we the fans treat Bucky's life. Wisconsin fans treat Bucky's life like it's a giant joke, or like he's an idiot, sort of. Like we all kind of laugh at Bucky, like the things he's doing are dumb, like he's just kind of a big oaf or something. And then you compare that with Brutus the Buckeye, and Brutus is, first of all, not a Buckeye because he's a man with a Buckeye for a head. Let's put things into perspective here. Let's not forget about that. He's a man with a Buckeye for a head, so that's different from a Buckeye. And a Buckeye is a nut, but it's like a tree. It's a nut that grows on a Buckeye tree. And that's what Brutus is, even though he's a man with a Buckeye for a head. And so what's interesting is that even though Brutus's appearance is very controversial, it's controversial to have a Buckeye for a head. Or it shouldn't be allowed. At least, like he's about to get canceled or something. Like you can't have that. It's really, really flies in the face of like transgenderism. The example of Brutus the Buckeye, the way he is, he's so controversial, but it's really like Brutus should be treated more like one of the monsters from Silent Hill, but the Ohio State fans treat him like he's one of the boys, because the way that Ohio State fans look at it, or like the way they act, is that Brutus is just no different from any he's like no different from any fan or player or coach or band member. Like everyone involved in Ohio State is the same. It's like the fans look at Brutus, and even though he has a giant ass Buckeye for a head, it's like he's no different from a person. And even though he's kind of like a pagan deity, where he's representing like flora, fauna, and humanity all in himself, even though and we would overlook that. And the reason he's representing fauna, or which one is it? Flora's got to be plants. It's got to be plants. Flora's got to be plants. That's what I learned in school. And I'm extremely educated and extremely qualified. I'm very competent in order to put on what I'm putting on. Because you needed an education to do this. And that's why I got it. It's like I got that degree in math so I could be Barge Mistletoe and show people some of his journey. And how am I going to do that without a math degree? Is why I went and got it when I was 18. I'm like, you know what? Things are going to change in my life. One day I'll be sitting in front of my TV, putting on a Twitch stream and podcast in ways that nobody would have expected. And that's some of that, I guess, is partially true. But let me figure out what shot selection. I'm going to definitely go with a chip. I'm going to chip this one. I'm going to chipperino. I'm going to chip. Let me choose. Oh, I guess in the heavy rough, something else happens where they don't let you pick a shot selection. Oh, okay, never mind. Nope, that's not true. This and other misinformation can all be yours if you just listen for an hour or so. Okay, so I'm really gonna have to power this one through, but not really, because I guess at 5 yards of carry, it says in the top right corner. You can learn alongside me as I get in there. It's probably the best shot I've hit all day.
Very crafty, isn't it?
Because I took my time. But Brutus, even though he is very different from... And the reason that fauna is represented is because a buckeye is not a buck's eye, but I'm guessing that's what they're describing. Because a buckeye, the nut, looks like an eye of an animal. I guess the eye of a buck, like the deer. Because the name of it doesn't necessarily wouldn't describe a nut of any kind, besides that we already know that a buckeye is a nut. It's just we lose sight of that a buck's eye is what's describing it. If that's true at all. I didn't look it up. Just so that I could needle the Ohio State faithful even more. Hopefully that fact that I said isn't even a fact. But it's like you don't want to disparage the name of Brutus, probably, because at the end of the day, he's taken kind of seriously. Like, even though, like, Brutus looks ridiculous, but Ohio State fans fail to acknowledge that he's a mascot at this point, even because I think it's because winning makes everybody the same, and Ohio State wins more, but they're a lot more serious about college football than Wisconsin is. Wisconsin, it's treated... I've probably mentioned this before. Wisconsin football is a little bit more of a joke. It's a little bit more carefree. Like, probably even the way that they run their practices at Wisconsin is just kind of like, you know, show us what you got, you know. Let's have a good time. But, like, they probably are, like, they're serious about it, obviously. Wisconsin's like, Wisconsin is a solid program, and they have the way that they do things, like they have standards, but, oh, and how am I supposed to get out of this situation? I know, I'm going to take a 3-iron. I'm going to run it low, and there's no 3-iron in my bag. That's what I was hoping. I have 1,000 wedges. Okay, I'll have to switch that up later. Let's see here. I really need to consider nothing and just slam this one through these trees right here without really thinking about it. That's as best I could do. Winning makes everybody the same, player to fan to mascot to band member. But, like, you are more of a winning franchise if you are taking things more seriously, because winning is more serious like that. But it's also the case that if you're on the winning team, not that Ohio State like wins the championship every year, but they win the Big Ten in recent years, like basically every year. So that you would say that Ohio State dominates the Big Ten, or in other words, Ohio State is the most dominant football team in the Midwest in this area. And so them in comparison to the teams in their conference, which are all in the Midwest, they have a higher standard of like winning tradition that makes it so that everybody involved in Ohio State is taking the whole thing more seriously. But like if you're on the winning team, like the way that like Ohio State is kind of like if you are a player and then you go as a recruit, you choose Ohio State. That's like choosing to be on the winning team. And there's a number of winning teams, like you could choose to be on Alabama, whatever. But it's kind of like for a team that wins a lot or a program that has a winner's mentality, everybody is made the same. Like if you do win and you're on the winning team, all of the differences, one player to the next, differences across different players on the team are all evened out. Like everybody's made the same at the point that your team wins. And that's kind of like the way it is for the entire organization, Ohio State. I'm just letting you know. I'm not saying that what they do is good or better. I think it'd be better if they didn't take it so seriously. Maybe is why I'm a Wisconsin fan and not an Ohio State fan. But I'm just saying there's something evil about Brutus because he's this unidentified. I mean, like he's really more like a mythological creature of sorts. But that's just right in everybody's face. And it's almost like Ohio State fans just completely ignore that he's this pagan guy, like how ridiculous he looks. So they're like, yeah, that's Brutus. Or it's like they don't even have to acknowledge that he's a mascot. In Wisconsin, they actually treat Bucky like he's a mascot. But Ohio State, I had to fly out of Columbus in order to gain some perspective on this. Like I had to escape being under the thumb of Brutus the Buckeye. Like maybe Brutus is like the guy that runs the entire operation, but it's like hidden that he is because no acknowledgement is made to him. Like something fishy's going on because of how weird Brutus looks and how everybody is just ignores it. Um, I mean, I don't know. His name is Brutus. Like Ohio, like Columbus is almost like you could describe it as a company town if you wanted to make fun of it. Like it's a company town and Ohio State University is the company because Ohio State football is, I would say, the most important thing that happens in the city. But the university does have control over, like, they're not going to bring in a professional baseball team in Columbus, like, if they wanted to make a new one, because that would compete with Ohio State football, probably. They have a pro hockey team here, but the way I understand it is, like, that's as much as they would allow. And so things like that you see then how the university, Ohio State, has influence over the city. But it's like a company town almost where things shut down at 12 a bit more maybe than in other cities. There like bars do. I'm sorry that I said bar like I'm from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin, but I'm not that far from Oconomowoc. I mean, I'm just trying to give an example of like a middle of the city, middle of the state. Like you don't want to say bar. You don't want to say bar like you're from Fond du Lac or Wauwatosa, because that'll put you in a world of hurt. That'll follow you around the entire rest of your life. It's like a company town, where the company has too much control. And really, the point that I'm making is that, like, maybe you could say something about, like, there's a curfew in the city, which I don't know if that's for certain, but it does seem like a lot of things shut down at 12 for a city of 900,000 people. Like, for a city of 900,000 people, it feels smaller than that. I think it has to do with adherence to the Ohio State University, which is like an adherence to Ohio, sort of. Like, hey man, don't knock Ohio. Like, people definitely do knock Ohio because of the level of seriousness that Ohioans take Ohio. It's a little bit like Texas, where people in Ohio wear a lot of Ohio on their shirts. I know that every state does that. But in Ohio, you're more likely to find, like, sweatshirts that have the shape of Ohio. But it's just that people in Ohio love mentioning Ohio because it's a basic thing to do. And there's a certain basicness that pervades this city, Columbus, and it has to do with a winner's mentality. Like, the reason I say that Ohio State has an influence over the city, almost like you could say it's a company town. Company town, probably too extreme a description. But I'm talking about how the winner's mentality seems to be part of Columbus, even beyond the Ohio State University. Sort of a winner's mentality, like a appearanceism that would come with a winner's mentality, where, like, if you have a winner's mentality, I feel like, I mean, it makes you kind of soulless because you have to sell out for something like an appearance, or in other words, you have to sell out to be more serious. Like, Ohio State has more money and more materialization that they commit to their football team and probably to their athletics than other universities. But it is actually one of the most populated undergraduate populations in the country, maybe one or two, number one or two ranked. But, like, a winner's mentality, I'm talking about a certain level of seriousness. You can't really, that's what I'm talking about, is that you could maybe you could generally describe some of what you see from the behavior of people in Columbus as it's hard for them to take a joke because the city sort of has a winner's mentality where if you really want to win, that's when you have to be the most serious. Like, you'll be the most serious person if you're the person most concerned with winning. And so that makes it so that it's like, it's harder for serious people to take a joke. And I feel like just generally in the city, there's seriousness that follows around everyone. But it's like, if you go downtown during Ohio State football games, people are willing to liven up and be a lot more loose and a lot more fun. Like, a burden has been lifted off of their shoulders if Ohio State won a game. And especially if they just won a big game. That's when you will see downtown Columbus, or I mean, like, High Street Columbus, the liveliest. People will lose their shit. And it's not just students from the university. It's just like the city. They'll get into euphoria more as long as Ohio State won a game. That's like the seriousness of the football team kind of follows. Oh, wow.
And this one will be for double.
That was a tough miss.
Let's take a look at the leaderboard.
But I was thinking about, as I flew away, what is more serious and what is more, did anybody see Aaron Rodgers on Joe Rogan? I felt like Aaron Rodgers was talking too much about his anti-vaccine anti-COVID vaccine agenda. I feel like he brought that up too much, where it was like he's letting himself be painted too much as a conservative in this issue, which you don't need to do. Like,
For the fairway.
COVID is over as far as I'm concerned, is what I'm saying. Like, I don't feel the need to take a side. Like, I was vaccine hesitant, didn't get one at the time. And I feel like now it's over, and I don't need to push an agenda about, like, hey, it was dumb that they criticize anti-vaxxers. I think it doesn't matter because the only thing that people like me, the only thing I was concerned about was, like, is the World Economic Forum really going to be able to push a world agenda and use the vaccine in order to do that? I mean, use the pandemic in order to do that. And it looks like they failed at that. And so, to me, it looks like it's sort of been proven that authoritarianism does have its limits, and that these people at the World Economic Forum that have collected all of these titles, honorary doctorates and whatever, so that they can move up the ranks. I mean, just they've collected a lot of authorities that they know are important on the world stage, so that they can be the authoritarians of the world. It would appear that this authoritarianism, which is like a prevailing world ideology, that's especially promoted by members of the World Economic Forum, because they've been subscribing to this ideology by doing nothing but collecting authorities. Because it's like, it's one thing to go out and do something, like be a construction worker for 20 years, and then you have the authority over that. Or like being an electrician, so that you know so much more than the average person about circuits in somebody's house. Like, it's one thing to get an authority. Then it's another thing to understand authority so much that you can step outside of it and look at it objectively, to the point that you're like, oh, the world is authoritarian so much that all that matters is for me to collect authorities, and certain ones that I know that the rest of the world will respect. Like, it's kind of like a high understanding of popularity, like what would be popular that would allow you to be smart enough to do something like, oh, I'm going to be president, because that's an authority that the world respects so much. Like, the political game, whatever, always has clout, basically. Like, you could look into the future and see that as an aspiring politician or authoritarian. Like, you could go into the game of politics, you could go, whatever, like, and the people that do that are, like, they realized that the world is about authority so much that they were able to spend their entire lives devoted to it. But you have to have that drive. I'm just saying this because myself, I didn't realize the need for authority. I just thought that, I think for a while I thought that you could just make fun of it. But it's like, I watched this interview. It is one of the best interviews really that I've ever seen, and it was with Lady Gaga, and it was when she was 23, and she's talking about, I'll link the video. It's like a 25-minute interview with her, but she's talking about how like, she got to where she was because she basically spent her entire teenage years in the New York downtown scene. Like, she told her parents when she was young, like maybe 13, she's like, all right, I'm going to go be a star or whatever. And they're like, okay, good luck with that. And then she said that her parents didn't see her for 5 years when she was a teenager, because she was always doing musicals and performing, or like dancing, like performing in different ways, or working on her act, or working on her music. Like, she was basically just working nonstop when she was younger. And like, that's what makes somebody to be the biggest star, is like, it only works if you work constantly. So she's explaining that. But besides that, you understand, like, I understand now that Lady Gaga she's more of a philosopher, because the things she's saying in this interview are kind of like straight philosophy, and artists kind of all are. Like, you could, I guess, I mean, at some point you would be able to say that about Taylor Swift, is like, because of her philosophy, she was able to make successful music. But Lady Gaga is like a philosopher because of the way that she's able to apply her ideas, but that her ideas drive all of her music. But like, she's way ahead of everybody else because of the ideas that are particular to her and that she's processing. It's like her ideas make her who she is, and she describes different ideas as if she was into philosophy or something. But in this interview, she was describing her album, The Fame, and that the whole motivation for the album was that she's processing her relationship to fame, and that fame is something that you choose, basically, and that she's saying how you can choose fame just through your clothing choices or how you walk down the street or whatever. And that she just made this album about an idea that she was processing. Was interesting. I forget what else she said. But she just said a lot of interesting things. But it made me realize that, like, the difficulty in becoming an artist like that, it has to do with a high level of commitment. Like, if I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, it doesn't have a lot to do with how funny I am. Like, when I first started out, I just thought that if you're more funny than everybody else, then people will figure it out or whatever. I mean, it's actually just about working hard and doing it all the time. But that's how you become a person. That's how you gain a persona, which is like something you need to do. But you don't have a persona if you don't have any authority. But Lady Gaga in this interview is making the case about the need for authority. She's like, I got to where I am because I spent all this time doing these things. Like, you don't get authority unless you do the thing actually. And that's like the way it feels to me if I do stand up. Like, it gives me really positive feelings to do it successfully, and it feels that way to me because I'm actually doing something. But it's like you're gaining the authority in real time. You're gaining an ability to be funny or talk to people on a stage in real time just by doing it. And it's like that experience is what you need to differentiate you from anybody. Like, all the most famous people, it's because they've spent a lot of time experiencing the things that they're saying they have authority over. Because that's the only way you get the authority. But it's like, it's the same thing as like choosing to be famous or something. It's just a choice you make, like anything you want to accomplish, and it's about doing it. But it's really like you have to sever your ties to the world of being alone and go out into the world of where everybody is, which are just two completely different worlds. And like the world of alone versus the world of around people, or it's like public versus private, they're really different worlds. Or in other words, it's probably important to respect the divide that happens. Like, what can happen if you're alone too much? Then you're subscribing to the world of alone, and that's just like, everything happens differently there, in my opinion, than the world of where there's people. But it's like going out and doing something or trying to gain some authority is always more difficult and more uncomfortable. But like, what Lady Gaga is talking about is the same thing as what Jordan Peterson was talking about 5 years ago, or just in general, like a central part of his message. Jordan Peterson is responsibility, but he's just talking about like, go out and do something so that you can prove to yourself you can lift a burden so that you feel good about yourself or whatever. He's just talking about you have to go out and do things, but in other words, you have to gain authority so that you feel like you have purpose. Like, and I think, I mean, it's something I'm adding on to it, that I'm saying his message is actually authority, but it's what Lady Gaga is saying is like, they're basically saying the same thing. If you want to have purpose and feel good about yourself, you have to do things, but it would actually, in some cases, if it's something you really want to do, it kind of takes this like ultimate level of sacrifice where you completely throw yourself into the world of trying to get authority, where it's more difficult, more uncomfortable, where you're always around people, but like doing things and being around people gets you authority. But it's kind of weird in this world because you can gain all of these authorities. It would appear like more and more you can gain authority through video games, like video game competitions, like especially where there's money, esports and whatever. It's weird that there are all these authorities that you can do just by sitting at your house, alone, or even just making TikToks at your house. And fashionably speaking, like it's becoming more fashionable to, it's like more okay to do something alone. Like YouTube didn't allow for people to make videos on their own, just like, oh, this is me at my house, talking about some random thing. Like TikTok allows that. It's more acceptable on TikTok for you to just be, like, you could be dancing alone. You can make 100 videos of you just dancing alone in your house on TikTok. You couldn't do that on YouTube, literally because it just wasn't socially acceptable. But it's like becoming more socially acceptable just to do something alone, because that's just the direction that it heads. So me,
9-9, I think.
let me see if I can finish a round of golf. I probably won't be able to unless I really rush through this. I'm on the 6th hole. Looks like my career,
Anything on the green?
because I'm on the Corn Ferry Tour right now, and in this video game, there's a hierarchy, so you can I'll graduate to the PGA Tour if I do well enough here. And so I will be making videos about this. I should commit more to energy to talking about my,
That one's come up short.
I mean, I'll pay more attention to this in the future, so that
This one's for bogey.
the round of golf I'm playing isn't a complete afterthought.
Yeah, well hold. Let's move
But I'm
on.
doing pretty poorly in this round. I wonder what having a really shitty round will do.
The leader now has
But I just started playing this game, so I don't really know the controls. So you'll watch me start out bad, and then out of the blue,
teeing off here at the 7th.
hopefully become a good golfer at this video game. But you can gain authority
Left all the way off the club.
just at your house, and it kind of begs the question, like, is the world of stand-up comedy going by the wayside? Is the world of doing things out in the world going by the wayside? But I would argue, and like, it's possible that everything is just becoming internalized, or like you'll be able to accomplish all the things that you want to just in your house. I think that it is not like that, and if it's going to be like that, it'll be a while. And also, I don't know if it'll ever be like that, because it's possible that we in the world value authority so much that we're always going to project importance into the people that are actually doing something. And like, it's just that will actually doing something, like, are we going to respect actually doing something and say that it's okay to actually do something even though you're just in your house? Like, will perception change so that we're like, you don't need to do something in the world? Because that's kind of that's something stand-up comedy makes a hard stand against, is kind of like the world of video games. Because stand-up comedy is, what's presented in it is that the authority gained by talking to people, doing shit out in the world. And in some senses, the digital age that we're in, where everybody's on their phone all the time, and it like consumes people so that they're spending so much time doing nothing, just doing bullshit, getting entertained by Netflix. In some senses, this is what has to be overcome, or like this is what is sucking people into commonality and into comfort, is phones and computers. And it's like the people like Joe Rogan and Mark Normand and Shane Gillis that we respect because they are out in the world doing something. In some senses, we respect them because they've overcome the world of commonality that gets so many other people. Because that's what they had to do. It's like they actually have to spend time working and writing jokes, and not doing the comfort thing. In some senses, this is what we respect the people we like for, the famous people. In some senses, they get famous because they're making choices. Like, I feel like it will always be like, phones are good and they provide information for us or whatever, but maybe it'll be this way for a long time where the phone is kind of just the number one deterrent to you actually ever being. I mean, the phone is just the number one deterrent to you making something out of yourself out in the world because it induces so much laziness in people. And what I'm saying is the whole vibe going on right now, and like TikToks people make about that work is stupid, like this push to end work or something, where there's a lot of people that just aren't going to work, or like there's a lot of, I don't know if it's still exactly this way as it was like 6 months to a year ago, where there's just a ton of job openings, people are just not showing up to work or whatever. Like this push to be like, I don't know why I wear my suit and go in, isn't that crazy? I just want to lay in my bed all day. And there's a lot of TikToks that get popular like that, because of the messages are positive. But I think that in reality, all of that is just kind of a bullshit lie, because working is the only way you're going to get to where you are. Like, I don't think it'll be the case that we're on the verge of a world that's going to push work out of the picture. I think it's possible it'll be completely the opposite, where we realize that you have to work. Like, I think that it's just a vote for laying down and going to sleep and staying in your house more. Obviously it is. The vote of like, work sucks. Why do I do this? It's not even real. Like, I'm talking about just what is life, what is reality kind of messages that are going on right now. A lot of them are bullshit. There's a lot of people on TikTok that do a philosophy sounding thing, like maybe it would sound like what I'm doing. And I realized recently how so many of them are just dog shit, because they're actually just saying nothing at the end of the day. But if you get popular on TikTok, you probably actually have to be saying nothing. You actually just have to be positive and saying messages that are just flash in the pan, that don't have any depth to them. You have to be more flash in the pan in order to be popular on TikTok. Popular TikToks are just positive, and what's scary about them is that it's like the closer that somebody holds the camera to their face is the more likes that they're going to get, because that's the direction things go with TikTok. Is that we used to have some dignity in the world because we were afraid that showing our face would be embarrassing. But with TikTok, they threw that out the window, because people that are on there like trying to give inspirational messages, or that are like an influencer, they're the people that are like, I'm going to commit to putting the camera as close to my face as possible, so the only thing you see is my face. Like the camera has gotten closer and closer to people's face because for some reason that's going to get a lot of likes because humans are just gross and disgusting, and they're for some reason they like to see a face right in front of them, as it turns out. I mean, some of it has to do with like the embarrassment of committing to putting your face right in front. It's the same with like the embarrassment of committing to dances when dances make you look ridiculous, make you look stupid. Like, you have to you have to show that you're committing to like that. Because people like to see you embarrass yourself. I mean, they like to see the exposure and the vulnerability. That's why they like to see people dance, especially stupidly, especially on the beat, in a corny way. Sometimes, like a lot of the times. Sometimes the new dance is just like the corniness is what people like about it, but it's like the exposure of, look, this is me, my face right here. People like it for some reason, but it's not because they're looking at the video and being like, we like that you put your face as close to the camera as possible. It's because involuntarily humans are so gross. They're like, oh, like when a face is right in front of them. It's the same on TV, really. Like, the faces have gotten closer to the camera on TV, too, I would argue. But even if they haven't, just like a face right in front of you talking about a tragic story. For some reason, people like to see other faces. But, like, that just seems counterintuitive or something. It seems ridiculous. Like, people are that basic and that simple that they're like, yeah, a face just like mine. They like to see, like, as if they were the person on the screen in front of themselves. Like, people love to see faces. They love to see pictures of people's faces when every person has one. Like, oh, we're in a simulation. Like, oh, wow, did you hear that we're in a simulation?
10 feet to the cup here.
I'm hoping that in the future we will take advantage of the air. And by that I mean you fly in an airplane, the whole thing is really corporatized and centralized. Air travel is very centralized to these giant passenger jets, 747s, and what have you. It's very centralized into this giant plane. And air travel in the future, I don't know how long it'll take, or I don't know if the world is just going to be subsumed by nature and we don't progress any further. Like, it's possible that the entire world is like a plant and it blooms in season, like the way that a flower does. It's possible the entire world is a plant, the entire earth, and like the way that a flower blooms for the month of May and then you don't see it the entire rest of the time. It's possible that that's what humanity is. Humanity is that flower blooming, and that's what's going on right now, is like the way that humans evolved is this more special occurrence on Earth. The majesty of the civilizations we're able to create and technology or whatever. It's possible that the world is blooming at this age, and then like maybe the flower is about to close. Like maybe we're going to go into a death period where humans go by the wayside, and then the earth blooms again once humans are gone with a different dominant species or like slightly different one, and then different civilizations that are created. Like, it's possible that the entire world is going to go under because we're just like a flower that's in bloom right now, and then maybe it's about to go away, but like the earth cycles and then it'll bring another iteration of it back the next year. Like, it's not necessarily the case that humans are going to do so great that we leave the earth, but I have hope that we will. that we are constantly getting better. I'd say that we are, and quality of life is improving, and more money is being created, and lots of things are actually going in a positive direction. We're feeding everybody in the world, and a lot better than we did 100 years ago. Everybody on Earth is richer than they were 100 years ago, and shit like that. But, what was I gonna say? So the Earth is in bloom, and oh shoot, what was I saying before that? Before I went off on that the Earth is in bloom. I can't really remember. I can't quite remember. Let me putt this putt here. Oh, I was saying that,
That's frustrating.
like, putting is difficult on this game. I missed another putt. This tournament's not going to go my way. I'm not going to get my PGA Tour card here. Wow. I really have to pay attention to these putts.
Oh dear, this next putt now for double bogey.
Barge Mistletoe, he is a regular size guy. I drew from the artistic bent, the artistic influences of Bubba Watson. I'm taking from the Bubba Watson genre, where Bubba Watson, big guy name for a regular size guy. I feel inspired by the example of Bubba Watson,
Ooh, nice line.
and that's where Barge Mistletoe comes from. Really, those are some of his roots, some of his origins. He comes from so many places, like Greece, like he's Greek and Irish and whatever, and all of those shits, of course. But I mean, like, so many places, so many nationalities. Of course, he's basically all of them. He is a cultural melting pot all his own. He's like Miami, Florida. And that's a little bit about Barge Mistletoe, but I'm talking about currently air travel, centralizing these big passenger jets. I'm hoping that
The 150-yard marker.
100 years from now, we will have decentralized air travel a little bit so that we have individualized compartments flying around. That's what I've always wanted since I was a kid. That's what I've been waiting for, is the personal elevators that fly in the air. Like, not that high, just like air traffic for personal elevators that are like 20 yards above ground level. And you fly in your little elevator everywhere. But just look at the sky and how much of that we're not using. We're using it for planes. Like, there are so many different versions of planes. Like, we need to decentralize planes into very many different flying objects and vehicles that travel in different ways and occupy different levels of the airspace, either really high or really low. You buy different vehicles that are more popular at different altitudes to fly them. Like, it's crazy how much of airspace that we're not taking advantage of. And you would probably say to me, well, that would be chaos. And really it wouldn't be, because ground traffic is chaos, and we manage that. Like, we'd find a way to manage. We'd come up with rules, like maybe for stopping when you're about to crash, whatever, and there would be crashes. It's just that it would get to, if there were tons of vehicles and it was more personalized the way you could travel through the air, it's just that, why wouldn't that happen? It's got to be going in that direction. We're going to decentralize air vehicles so that we have very many different small to big things that people fly around in. We'll come up with air traffic rules, and so that everybody will become the pilot, and there will be a decentralization and a destandardization of like piloting authority, so that we don't read all this perception into like it's this huge major thing to get a pilot's license. It'll become less a thing to get a pilot's license through a decentralization of air travel into the future. And it's just that that's the way that these things work, is that originally they're this elitist hieratic existence where originally there's only a few instances of a thing, and we describe those things more as an illusion, or I mean, those things present themselves more as a perfect example. But at the point that there's lots of different versions of things that we can fly around in, and we gain knowledge of those things. We can define them and see what they are. Since we can't see very many different versions of air travel besides like commercial jets now, it doesn't make any sense, the things that I'm saying. But the same way, like decentralization, it's just that we need to take advantage of the air. Like, why aren't we? We don't, because we're superstitious, because we think that very many crashes will happen if you give air travel over to regular people. But it's just that there's like this really great level of importance that we put on flying when it is centralized to commercial jets, where we're like, holy shit, it's this major drastic thing. If a plane crashes, so much so that CNN will run a story on it and it'll be the biggest news in America for 2 weeks. If a passenger jet goes down, sometimes anywhere in the world, it doesn't even have to be in America, CNN will run a story and like get really good ratings. They get really good ratings off plane crashes. But it's just that over time, decentralization will happen in this area with really the perception of it, so that we won't perceive this big divide between the pilot and the regular person, and we also won't perceive this big divide between like a plane crash and a car crash. Over time, as very many different versions of vehicles enter the air, there will be crashes like car crashes, you know. It would be like we would have as many air crashes as we had car crashes, probably, in the same way that we're okay with the amount of car crashes that happen now in the world. We just carry on. It'll get that way in flight. It's just right now there's this big divide because of corporate control, ultimately. Monopolization of the air, and not exactly monopolization, because it's not like one company owns the entire air, but like it's like an oligarchy. Like whoever air companies, what do you call them? Flight companies have a lot of power in that area. Not that they have to do a lot to propagandize themselves, like, we own the air, don't you forget it, so don't start making your own vehicles, because that's not really a worry. Like, they don't have to worry about that happening so much now. Like, it's not really competitive, so they don't have to wage this big campaign against whatever, like, alternate industries that were rising up against them. But this will happen in the future. Alternate industries in the area of air travel to the corporatized American Airlines and Southwest Airlines of the world, they'll see more competition as time goes on. I'll figure this out so that I do like a whole round during an episode in the future, so that you can be more compelled by my career in this video game. And so I'll figure that out. I'll put out a new episode in a couple days.
Sure.
And thanks for listening.
Okay, not the best result, but a
Goodbye.
chance to get up and down.
Coming up a little short with that effort. Not bad, though.
And here we are with the third shot.